right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Uncharted Podcast Network. This is Uncharted territory, and it is that time again to strap in and get ready for liftoff, because this is going to be an amazing episode, as it always is, because this episode, episode 6 of Uncharted territory, is, like the rest, the main event. I'm John. Welcome back into the territory. Sorry, it looks a little messy in here. Wife with crafts and all sorts of stuff, okay? We're also kind of resetting the office after I had a couple days off last week, so it's a work in progress, right? Nonetheless, on we go. Down at the bottom, bam, there should be a brand new nifty little bar that has all my social medias on them. Like, follow, share, and subscribe to all of them so you can be in the loop and updated when things like this happen. When I end up moving from a Wednesday to a Friday due to unforeseen circumstances or whatever that may be. That way you can see it because I post all of that kind of stuff onto all of my social medias: Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, TikTok, all that, right? And then, of course, right here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, smash that bell button so that you know all the notifications and when all the new stuff comes out. That way you don't miss a minute in the Uncharted territory. Because that's what this is all about, right? This week I came only essentially with one topic, so this probably won't be the longest episode of all time, but I figure what we're going to talk about today is we went last night, me and my wife, to see the new Michael Jackson movie, Michael. And, people who grew up with me kind of know that I went through this very massive phase of being a massive Michael Jackson fan, and so this kind of reignites a lot of that for me, or at least gives me that nostalgia run of how cool I felt like I was at that time, and honestly, how cool the process is and all that kind of stuff. Michael was obviously a massive superstar and massively before my time when it came to my age and stuff like that. I was born in '95. He was already a megastar. 15 years prior to that, and by the time I was old enough to care, really he had fallen into obscurity and was, jumbled up in a bunch of allegations and stuff like that. So he had really fallen off as the king of pop by the time I was old enough to care. And then in 2009, he obviously passes away. And for me, like, that felt really weird, and I didn't necessarily know why, right? I was immediately drawn to it, watching all of the news highlights of the situation. And then at the time, it was like one of the times in my childhood where we actually had cable. So all of the networks were running these really good, like, 2 hour long, full life bioptics of Michael. And it really made me feel as though I had missed oh so much of how good he was as a performer, especially early on in his life, and the triumphs and the tribulations, and the beginnings and stuff like that. And it was all just such a larger than life story to me that it hooked me. It drew me in. Um, Obviously, for those of you who know, I mean, most people probably know, right? Michael Jackson, born in Gary, Indiana, part of the Jackson Five with his brothers. Joe Jackson, terrible human being. I don't feel bad about saying that at all. He was the orchestrator of the Jackson Five, and essentially attempted to ride the coattails of Michael Jackson for his entire life and his entire career. Everything was about the Jacksons in terms of it being a family brand. The family itself was a brand. Numerous times in their life, they compared themselves to like Pepsi and Coca-Cola as like, this is, we're this. So, the entire lifespan of Michael Jackson, you can see spots where the original Jacksons, sorry about that, and the Jackson Five and stuff like that, all kind of uh, ride on the coat, right, of Michael Jackson, and all the way through all of the absolute hits. The Michael movie is a fantastic bioptic. So coming from somebody like me who took a lot of time to study, like, coincidentally, it's actually like right on my bookshelf. As funny as this is, it's just massive, so it takes me a second to get it. But like the week he died, I bought this. So I was a very small kid. It's a gigantic book. It's one of the first books that I read cover to cover. Um, just very much so covers the life and times of Michael Jackson. But this movie does a really good job at hitting the high notes, right? It has some of the low stuff too, and all the bad reviews I was seeing were like, oh, it's the greatest hits tour. It doesn't actually dive into any of the stuff. I got a multitude of opinions on that, but I think the easiest one, right? And A, this is going to be a two-part movie. They cap it at the end with his story continues, banner, and then they hit the credits. And at that point, by the time the credits roll, and I won't give spoilers because it's still a very new movie for the most part. But by the time I say no spoilers, but like it's his life and you can Google it. Um, by the time the movie ends, they've only covered hit like 3 of his solo albums post being a member of the Jacksons, which would be Off the Wall, Thriller, and they just get you started with Bad before they kill the credits. Um, try like they do such a good job covering all of it, and you're not going to get the bad stuff, right? Like, or at least not at this point. Like, he's so young in this point. The bad stuff you get in this movie are very much so the highlights of him being an abused child, and the whole band, the Jackson Five, were all abused. Um, Joe Jackson was known to punish violently, physically, for missed notes, bad dance steps, all sorts of stuff like that, poor performance, whatever. You name it, Joe Jackson punished it. So those are like the highlights of the bad, right? They talk about the Pepsi commercial. The Pepsi commercial happens just as the 1985-ish Victory Tour was supposed to kick off. Michael did a commercial for Pepsi that was called the Pepsi Generation, essentially using Billie Jean as kind of a pivot to advertise for Pepsi. And the pyro goes off, lights his hair on fire, and that caused a world of problems for Michael. It highlights his first nose job and stuff like that, but it doesn't give you any of the stuff, and by stuff I mean like the allegations of child abuse, child sexual misconduct, and stuff like that. Those things didn't appear in this movie, and a lot of the bad reviews that I saw were, oh, it gave you it's sugar coated, it gave you the vanilla. um the early life, as much as he did have problems in his early life, the early life was very much so vanilla, like in comparison to the late 90s and early 2000s for Michael Jackson. Um, so yeah, and on top of that, and this was my biggest point when I was talking to my wife about it. Jafar Jackson obviously plays Michael Jackson. Jafar being Michael's nephew. Uh, you're not gonna. That guy's not gonna. I guarantee, even for the second part of the series, if it's gonna dig into the stuff, and I won't keep saying the stuff because I'm sure YouTube hates that, right? But if they're gonna dig into the stuff, I'm sure Jafar Jackson won't be a huge part of that. In his own, like, what, you're not gonna want to have to go into allegations against your uncle as an actor portraying your uncle. Like, I just don't know how that looks and how that feels. But the high notes, right? They do absolutely go on a greatest hits tour. You get a lot of the Jackson 5 hits, ABC, I'll Be There. Then the second you get to Off the Wall, you get exactly what you think, right? Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Wanna Be Starting Something was the number one, like the first track on the Thriller CD. So that kind of runs as like a background themed music the whole movie, essentially. You get Beat It, you get Thriller, you get Billie Jean. Like I said, you get Bad, you get Human Nature. So a lot of the hits, a lot of the big hits you get throughout the movie. And again, like, I felt like for Jafar being very new to acting and such a massive role essentially to fill as one of the biggest stars of all time, Jafar Jackson did an outstanding job being Michael Jackson. And I don't know how much of what he was doing was acting in terms of like voice. In terms of voice, I don't know how much of his persona for this movie was a pure act. But if it's not an act and he sounds that way, he's a copy and paste. It's shockingly good. He has the light voice, the higher pitch. I know a lot of the singing was apparently him, and he does a great job. I don't have any real qualms with any of it. The dancing was great. They recreated like Motown 25, where he does the moonwalk the first time. They recreated Thriller. They recreated Beat It. Like, they do a lot of. They recreated Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. All the music videos for these songs. and all of them were, from somebody who has watched a lot of them during that phase of my life, very accurate and very fun and very energetic, and it was very enjoyable. Altogether, movie was fantastic. I really did enjoy it. I went in very skeptical as I had heard so many negatives, kind of, from critics, IGN, stuff like that. I had seen a lot of, 3, 4 star reviews out of tens, so not very good. But honestly, for what it was, and if you expected it to be more, I just don't know what necessarily you expected. For what it was, for a kind of makeshift biopic, or a recreation of Michael's life, it was very good and very telling. And just like I said, for me, it was very like light bulb light bulb on for how good he was as a performer and why I ended up, kind of in that phase of my life there for a while. Um, Friends criticized it for a very long time, but I went through a very big phase, seventh, eighth grade, in that window of really trying to nail being a good Michael Jackson dancer and stuff. My mom put me in the Thriller class the year after, or the year of Michael Jackson's death, and so they teach you the whole Thriller routine. We got to dance at Zombie Crawl downtown, which was fantastic. That was a blast, and the only time I've ever been to Zombie Crawl, during Halloween time. It was awesome, and I know they still do it every year. It's still a piece of the show, essentially, or a piece of the fest that goes on for Zombie Crawl. Um, I had the jacket, I had the glove, I had all sorts of stuff. It was a lot of fun, and to be honest, at that point too, probably the best physical shape of my life. I like, as much as I feel like males a lot of times get criticized for having passions in things like dancing, it is an ass kicker. Like, having to do that and get those things memorized and actively do it over and over and over again. Um, those things kick your ass. I was like, going into high school, I weighed like 130 pounds, 140 pounds. Like, I was not a big kid. Freshman year, I was on the wrestling team. My last official weigh-in, I weighed 146 pounds, and that was probably late December of that year, of my freshman year. So, like, I mean, I was very physically active and physically in shape at that point. Those things are ass kickers, and that was a big part of it for me. And having a couple friends who also kind of took it up with me and really enjoyed, the act of doing it, the act of performing, it was really fun, and it was always something I enjoyed. I coincidentally don't have my yearbook on hand, but I was featured in my 8th grade year in the yearbook in my Thriller jacket at the like October dance doing Thriller. It was fun. It was a blast. Get crap to about it to this day. I don't care. For a while I cared, because it was like, again, a big chunk of my life, and people thought it was the biggest thing I ever got from it was like, oh, that's gay. And that was like when that was like an appropriate or an approved mode of operation. It was a blast, and I always had fun doing it. So there was a big chunk of time where I felt really embarrassed by it because the world thought it was apparently a taboo thing, but it was a blast. So like I said, this movie really just reignited that was just such a cool piece of my life, of such a very brief window. I turned 31 this year. That was, well over a decade ago, and I was probably, like I said, it was 2009, 10, 11, kind of in that window. Um, so like, it was just a very interesting little nostalgia push for me of like, this was cool. It's still cool. And obviously the next part I'm sure gets into a lot of the nitty gritty and the bad stuff that happens later in life. One of the last movies I ever got to see, while my mom was alive, with my mom, was This Is It. We went to the midnight premiere of This Is It, and I own it. It's an amazing movie. Um, Covering all the rehearsals for Michael Jackson for the This Is It tour, which was going to be the retirement tour of Michael Jackson, which he tragically passed away the day before that tour kicks off. But the video, or that movie, just highlights all the rehearsals, and it covers the entire track list and what that show was going to look like, for the paying customers that were going to see him in the Staples Center, just, obviously, 24 hours after he died. That would have been when that tour would have kicked off. To me, again, just to me, an amazing talent. a lot of the other crap, and I know Netflix just did the verdict of Michael Jackson as a documentary and stuff like that. There are some troubling things in that. I think any court case that revolves around that type of activity is going to be troublesome, no matter what you kind of want it to look like. And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure the next part of the movie kind of has to touch on those things, those troubling parts of life. Michael had a big, phase in the 90s and 2000s where he wasn't in the public eye because the world had kind of turned its back on him, in its own capacity, and everybody will have their opinion on that, right? Um, so for me, it still becomes like having to separate the art from the artist. And there's no denying that Michael Jackson in the 80s and the 70s, 80s, and 90s was absolutely the king of pop and one of the best talents on the planet. His Super Bowl halftime show is still one of my all-time favorites. I watched one of the overseas concerts from the Dangerous tour, which was incredible. Fans are passing out before he even says a word. Those things are always just so interesting to watch and to see the dynamic of the music scene in that time, and as well as the dynamic of Michael Jackson to the general public was absolutely insane. And like I said, this movie to me just highlighted all the good. It highlighted all the things that he contributed early on in his life that changed music, that changed MTV, that changed how record labels dealt with black performers, stuff like that, because there were still a lot of taboos happening at that time. MTV wasn't big at the time on promoting black musicians, black artists, stuff like that, and Michael was a trailblazer for knocking down those walls and becoming the next big thing and advancing that stage for everybody. So I think, if you go, I highly recommend it. Go check out the Michael movie. It is an absolutely stellar movie. It'll make you want to dance. There was a lady sitting, an older lady. She had to be in her mid 70s, sitting right next to me and my wife. Every time Joe Jackson was on the screen, my wife could hear her bad mouthing him, and every time a song came on, you could watch her sitting in the chair, bopping her foot, move it like she was having a absolutely great time. And that, to me, just epitomizes how important he was to that generation. She would have been, that's 40 years ago. So she would have been an adult, but she would have been an adult capable of seeing and witnessing the impact Michael Jackson had on not only the music community, but on the world at that time. I look forward to Michael 2 or whatever they're going to call that. I saw that it is in pre-production, so they're going through all that stuff now, and they think that they'll start filming in 2027. I look forward to it. I think it's going to be an amazing sequel. It'll be tough for them to not do one, right? Because they kind of do leave it kind of halfway, right at the open. There's an open spot there. And there's plenty of solo albums in front of him after that. Like I said, only covered 3. So, like I said, go check it out. It was a really good movie, and it was more than good enough that I felt like I wanted to come on here and spill my guts about, my time, giving a crap and dancing like Michael Jackson. And like I said, this definitely gave me the nostalgia of those good old days, in my opinion. And if I wasn't 100 pounds heavier, I'd probably still be giving it a shot. But 100 pounds heavier and 15 years older, so God only knows how that would go, right? That'll wrap the show for today. As always, Roosevelt's. Go check them out. I'm rocking the Minecraft diamonds today. Got all the armor on it. Got the diamond little nuggets on there. A fantastic piece of art. My kid loves this shirt. This is one of his favorites that I have. I'll drop the bar at the bottom like I normally do. Roosevelt's. Go check them out. rsvlts.com. Check out all the awesome fandoms. There's something for everybody on roosevelts.com. And you come for the shirts and you stay for the community, as my boy Casey has said in the past. I've heard him say it multiple times, and that to me is the epitome of why I enjoy the Roosevelt's community. The shirts are one thing, but the people, they're just a completely different thing. And again, Fan Expo and stuff like that, I got to incorporate with a lot of the Roosevelt's community. I just went to 2 nights of live tapings, not live, but they're tapings for what they'll call live TV for TNA Wrestling. And the first night we had a Roosevelt's row with a bunch of fellow Roosevelt insiders, and that was absolutely incredible. Roosevelt's is a great community. Next week's episode, by the way, we're going to talk about TNA. We're going to talk about what that looked like. I'll throw up some pictures from our night, from the 2 nights of tapings for TNA. A very eye-opening performance as well. Something different. I've now seen WWE, AEW, and TNA all in a calendar year, so that's a banner year for wrestling for me. But we'll talk about that next week on Uncharted Territories on Wednesday. But for now, Roosevelt, go check them out. It's still at the bottom. Go to their website, get their app, check all their stuff out, buy a shirt, see what you think. They're amazing. I stand by it. I know plenty of people now who I know have hundreds, if not thousands, of them. It is an amazing community. Go ahead and join, be a part of it. At the bottom the whole time has been my social medias. So check those out. Go like, follow, share, and subscribe to all the socials. Subscribe here on YouTube so that you can keep getting all my Uncharted Territory videos. Those are coming out weekly. And I'll probably start trying to do some, wrestling PLEs and stuff like that as live streams. But we'll kind of cross those bridges as we get closer to it. Otherwise, thank you so very much for tuning in to this week's episode of Uncharted Territories. This is 6 in the book, and I'm very happy to be doing this and to keep going. And honestly, this last week was some of my highest viewership yet. It's not massive numbers, and I keep trying to not look and to not fixate on them. But very happy to see that number. Every week now it's gone up just a little bit, and I will take it. One new one every week is always going to be a benefit and a fun addition. And having somebody, other people to interact with, it's always a fun time on this show. So again, thank you so very much for tuning in. My name is John. This has been Uncharted Territories, and I will see you next week. Have a great one, guys.